Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. One, two, three, four, five. Hey, this is Victor Antonio going live here for a little bit. I'm going to talk about motivation today. Start of a new year. Let's talk motivation. I'll wait to see if anybody decides to join me. I didn't really televise this or market this, so this is kind of an impromptu conversation with my Facebook fans. So I'll wait a little bit, see who jumps on. If not, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to myself. That's never a pleasant conversation, right? Anyway, let's see if a few people jump on. It'd be great. But anyway, so one of the things I want to talk about today is, the essence of motivation and, some of the things I do to stay motivated in the business world. And so I thought I'd just do this podcast just to talk about Mike Coronado has joined. Mike Coronado from Lightspeed VT is awesome. The Lightspeed VT platform, lightspeedvt.com. VT stands for virtual training. They've been an excellent company to work with, man. So they give me a big thumbs up. So the support I get from Lightspeed VT is awesome. I should get paid for even saying these things, right? Anyway, Chevy Chévere, my Puerto Rican homie from Chicago. Chevy is a cool dude. You really need to check out Chevy. He's an awesome dude, man. Chevy's the one that helped me. I don't know if I can say this, Chevy, but I'm going to say it anyway. But Chevy's the one that really helped me get my Wikipedia page up. So, Chevy, muchísimas gracias, hermano. Anyway, so he was awesome. Paco LeBron. Oh, man, it's been a while, man. How's it going, Paco? Hope the business is going well on the IT side. So, I know your business was growing, so good for you. Anyway, I think I would just jump into this. It's an impromptu podcast. I just wanted to talk about motivation. We're kicking off the new year. It's one of those things, I often get, Victor, how do you stay motivated? And, when, sometimes things don't go your way. Well, the reality is we all have difficulties. Everybody on here probably has some situations they're dealing with, whether it's personal or professional. And so when I come to motivation, when I talk about motivation, I always go back and I remind people to go read my first book, The Logic of Success. This was my first book. And one of the things that I cover in The Logic of Success, when it comes to motivation, there's a guy by the name, I should say a guy, there's a doctor by the name of Dr. Martin Seligman out of the University of Pennsylvania. And I highlight one of his studies in this book. And by the way, if you send me a link or an email, rather, I'll send you the PDF if you want this. And Dr. Martin Seligman said something interesting. He came up with the school of positive psychology. And positive psychology is about, in a nutshell, and I'm not doing it justice, but I'll give you the quick story. That is basically that you will stay positive depending on what you say to yourself. He calls it the explanatory style. An explanatory style is when something goes right or goes wrong. More specifically, what do you say to yourself? And it's what you say to yourself that will determine whether you will be an optimist or a pessimist. For example, let's say you didn't close a sale, right? And sometimes you make it personal. You say something like this to yourself, God, I'm such an idiot. See, that's what your brain received. That's the personal part. I'm such an idiot. Now, you can also make the condition permanent. No matter what I try, things never work out. Permanent, right? Right? No matter what strategy I try, no matter how hard I work, no matter where I go, no matter what I try to do, nothing ever works out. That's a pervasive. So he always talks about how, from a personal standpoint, we say negative things to ourselves. Permanent, meaning it'll never change. And then there's this pervasiveness sometimes in our language that no matter what I try, things will never change. And basically, he says that in order for you to change your mindset, you really have to monitor what you say to yourself. And it sounds so simple, but yet, we all say these things to ourselves, right? And so I've become very consciously aware. And I don't know if this is called that, if it's just awareness or just top of mind, but when something doesn't go right, I'm always careful what I say to my brain because it does hear me. On sales and motivation, all right. This is a book that I wrote, I think this came out last year. It's called Sales Models. This one has 50 models for effective selling. So, what I tell people is that I've put all the, like some people collect cars, right? Some people have different, collect golf balls or, manga comic books, whatever it may be. I collect models. I collect sales models. And so hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be publishing an updated version of this. I think I'll be adding 25 more sales models. And the reason I think models are important is that that's the way we perceive the world. We perceive them through models. And so if you understand different sales models, when you're in a sales situation, you'll be able to recall that model right away. It's just a framework. So if you get a chance, again, if you email me something, victor@selingergroup.com, I will send you a copy of that. One of my favorite books. This one is one of those hidden gems that I don't really talk about, but I love this book. It's called The Sales Psycho. Yes, The Sales Psycho. And The Sales Psycho is basically, by the way, the subtitle is Inside the Mind of a Serial Seller. And basically, it's a guy who's gone insane selling, and he goes in there and he's interviewed by somebody, and he explains why he's become the greatest salesman in the world and what drove him nuts. It's a fictional book, but it's a fun book. And what I love about that book, it's that it really gets into the headspace of the greatest salespeople you'll ever come across. So again, it's called The Sales Cycle. It was kind of, by the way, just a small note. I use the same, I'll say, structure or storyline as, remember the Hannibal Lecter movie? What was it called? Silence of the Lambs. When Clarice goes in there to interview Hannibal, it's almost the same thing. So but put in the sales context, nobody dies. Okay, sorry. Let me see. This one right here, this book is the simplest, most powerful book I have. If you ask me what's my number one book, I say this is my number one book. Response block selling is, a new approach for reducing seller resistance or buyer resistance. And if you don't know how to use the response block structure, I'm telling you, you're missing out. This is such an easy / powerful tool to implement within a pitch or a presentation. This is what you want. Let me put this one to the side for now. When it comes to motivation, this is the one you want. This is basically, here, let me get my screen back here. I'm doing a couple of things at the same time. But anyway, the greatest gift, if you're an Og Mandino fan, by the way, if you know who Og Mandino is, leave me a comment if you know who Og Mandino is. Og Mandino wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World, The Greatest Miracle in the World, which is one of my favorite books. And he always writes it in it's a fictional style of writing, but it's a way of providing motivational content in a fictional style / scenario. So this book was greatly motivated by Og Mandino. It's called The Greatest Gift. And towards the end, I reveal what is the greatest gift. And the way this is set up in this book, it's really interesting. It's basically, there's a young man sitting at a coffee, in a coffee shop. He has certain problems, certain issues. And along comes this older man, and basically they have a conversation. So this whole book takes place in a coffee shop, in a conversation between a young guy and an older gentleman. And the exchange between them in terms of analyzing life, the meaning of life, purpose of life. What is the meaning of success? What do we mean when we talk about the quality of life? What do we mean when we say we want to live the good life? What does it really mean? Beyond the material things, what does it really mean? That is covered in this book, The Greatest Gift. Love this book. And you guys already know this one. This one I released this time last year. It's called Sales Ex Machina, How AI is Changing the World of Selling. Now, this one isn't really about motivation. This is more about what's happening in the world of selling and how things are changing. And I think it's interesting that if you're in the field of selling, you really need to read what's in here, because this is the first book that really talks about how artificial intelligence is really changing how we sell. And this should motivate you to, for example, implement a CRM system. If you don't have one, you should be doing it. You should be using one. If you're a company and you're not using your data and using, analytics on them, you should be. And so that's what this book talks about. And so as I move into this new year, I always set small goals. And today I want to share a conversation I had with a friend of mine. His name is Dean. And Dean said something interesting, kind of shifted my mind. You ever talk to somebody that they just kind of just say something that just shifts your brain a little bit? And Dean said, I've decided to put together a 3-month rolling business plan. I go, what? A 3-month rolling business plan. And I go, what does that mean? A 3-month rolling business plan. And let me kind of describe it for you. It's really brilliant. And I just heard this today, so I'm still processing what he said. He said, if you do a 1-year business plan, it's too long. right? It's just too long, right? Things change within a year. And then he said he looked at 6 months, and even that didn't seem like the right time frame. He said he settled on 3 months being the right time frame for developing a personal business plan. And what he did was within those 3 months, he created a 3-week rolling average. 3 months. Within those 3 months, he said, what do I want my 3 weeks to look like every 3 weeks? It's for 3 months. And so it's interesting. He actually laid out what his 3 weeks would look like. So, for example, week one, first week of January, second week of January, third week of January. First week, he says, here's what I'm going to get done. Second week, here's how much traveling I will do. Third week, here's how much traveling I will do, and here's what I'll get done. Anyway, he laid it out. And then he just he repeats the cycle again for 3 months. And then at the end of 3 months, he evaluates where he is and where he should be. And I thought this was an interesting concept. And I wanted to share that with you only because too often I hear people talking about, generating a business plan for a whole year. And sometimes I think, you got to have line of sight. You know what I mean? Something that's more short distance, something that's closer to reality and closer to in the timeline, on a timeline. For example, what Dean is talking about is that instead of thinking about a year, let's think about just 3 months. And then he said, instead of just thinking about 3 months, let's break that up into 3 weeks. That was his lower number. I mean, you could probably say 3 days, but I like the fact that he's thinking 3 weeks at a time and then moving the ball down the field, so to speak, if I can use a sports analogy, to kind of really gauge where he's going in his, in his progress, where he wants to go, towards his goal. And so, if that's helpful to you, I'm glad, I think it's a fascinating concept. I look at things in terms of 6 months, but he's made me really rethink my processes. Maybe I should start thinking of things in 3-month cycles because too often things change. Now, I do have what I call the micro goals and macro goals. This year, I got some big macro goals, and I only have 3 of them. I'll share the biggest one I have this year. This year, as you know, I launched the Sales, Velocity Academy. It used to be the Sales Mastery Academy. I changed it to the Sales Velocity Academy. And so, and again, working with the folks over at Lightspeed VT. And so, we moved to a subscription model, and the numbers are going up very nicely. And so, one of my macro goals is to reduce the amount of time I'm traveling. I love speaking, love doing it, but reduce the amount of time I'm traveling and see if I can generate more income online without having to leave the house. That's one of my new macro goals. So I have a financial goal I want to hit this year. I think we're in a good position to hit it. I think it's an aggressive goal, but it's a realistic goal. But mentally, I said to myself, I don't want to travel as much anymore. I hear a lot of speakers. I have a lot of speaker friends, as you know. And what's interesting is that I won't tell you who I spoke with, but I spoke with a speaker back in December. And this speaker's killing it. I mean, just rocking it. You know what I mean? He's doing over 100 gigs a year, and I'm like, and it's funny because when he said that, because, I was like, that's too much. You know what I mean? I wasn't even impressed. I got to be honest. I mean, in my heart, and I let him know. I go, yeah, that's kind of good. I'm glad. But in my, now if you just said this, if you'd have told me that 10 years ago, I'd be like, wow, what? 100 gigs? Are you kidding me? That's awesome. But now I'm going, I did about 50, 60 last year, and that seemed like too much already. Again, we have different priorities, right? My priority is more like quality of life, stay home, really enjoy my life, that type of thing where, and anyway, we're having the conversation and he admitted that, it's too much. And he's spending more time at the airport, more time traveling. The money's great. He's killing it, making great money. But at what price? Do you know what I mean? At what price? And so I think we all have to find a way to assess where we want to be. I always have in mind that story about the 2 runners. They were running neck and neck, and then the other person looks over, and just that looking over cost them, let's say, a microsecond, but it was enough to make them lose, or cause them to lose the race because he looked over at the other lane to see where the other person was. And when I think about personal success, one of the things I tell myself is, stop looking in the other lane, what other people are doing. Do you know what I mean by that? Really stop looking at what other people are doing. If some people want to run faster, God bless them. Let them run faster. If some people are moving slower, it's their world. You have to move at your pace. And, one more thing I was talking to Dean about, I don't know if you heard of a guy named Jordan Peterson. I think I got his name right. And he said something interesting. He said, you don't have to compete with other people. You have to compete with who you were yesterday. Now, I know I don't have that totally right, but I'm close. But listen to that phrase. You don't have to compete with other people. You just have to compete with who you were yesterday. In other words, you have to be better than you were yesterday. Isn't that a great way of looking at it? Instead of thinking about other people and looking over there, why not worry about where you were at yesterday and did I just inch it forward a little bit? In my business, I'm always telling myself, what did I do today? I literally ask myself this question every day. What did I do today to move the ball forward? Again, using another sports analogy, more specifically football, is what did I do today to move the ball forward? And everything counts. If I moved an inch, it counts, right? An inch could be, maybe I wrote a small article, right? A yard may be, I produced a new video or maybe did a new podcast. Or if I do 2 or 3 podcasts, well, that's 2 or 3 yards. But I'm always asking myself, what did I do today to move my business forward towards the goal I want? And that allows me to ask myself again and hold myself accountable for what I produce every day. And I even ask myself this on the weekend. Yes, I do. Do I get something done every day? Does the ball move forward? No, there are days I don't. It doesn't move. I don't feel like doing something. I just feel like watching a black and white movie. I'm a black and white movie fan, by the way. Those old movies, those 1930s, 1940s, and those old samurai flicks. I am such an addict, it isn't even funny. But anyway, I digress. There's times where we just don't want to do anything. We just have to unplug from the matrix, right? By unplug from the matrix, I mean unplug from social media, unplug from the world, the news, everything, right? Just unplug from everything. And so, I don't get discouraged when I don't do something. I just give myself permission to not do anything. But I'm always asking myself, what do I do to move the ball forward? And think about your business, same thing. What is it that you do to move the ball forward every day? Because success doesn't come in one foul swoop. It does not. I mean, we know this. Intuitively we know this. Logically we know this. But for some reason, we expect like these things to happen quickly. I don't know if it was Jerry Seinfeld who was asked this question, and I'm sure it's gone back and forth who said it. But, a comment was like, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success. You've heard that one, right? 10 years to become an overnight success, which means people work in the background. And then when you finally notice them, well, they've been working it for 10 years. Or if you listen to Malcolm Gladwell, there's the 10,000 hour rule, right? All this effort, all this work that you have to put in to be where you want to be. And I agree with them. Every time I talk to somebody who is successful, they always say the same thing. It's the same story. It's little things every day, every week, trying to get better, trying to improve. The success didn't come overnight. And so I think if you're just starting out in business, even if you want to be, for example, a speaker, trainer, a consultant, whatever it may be, it just doesn't happen overnight. And so, as we kick off this new year, ask yourself, what am I going to do? What's my plan? Am I going to use a 1-year plan, 6-month plan? Are you going to use Dean's plan? Is it a 3-month plan? Maybe every 3 weeks you start recycling that plan to see, what am I doing over the next 3 weeks? And maybe that seems more reasonable. Sometimes, the old saying about, never eat an elephant whole, you eat it one bite at a time. And maybe as we go towards success, we try to eat it one bite at a time. And I'm just sharing this with you because I go through my personal trials and tribulations. Over the holidays, I spent time, you can't see the rest of the studio, but I spent time trying to find the right pieces of equipment for this studio, including the mic, the boom arm, and I had all kinds of problems. I can't tell you how many times I ordered something, didn't work, spent some money that didn't work. Went over to the store, whether it's Best Buy, Guitar Center, whatever it may be, trying to find the right pieces. And it's frustrating as hell when you can't find the right things. But in my mind, I go, it'll work out. I'll figure it out. And I can now say that, after about maybe a month and a half of wrestling with equipment, trying to find the right combination, I found all the pieces I need for my business as I move forward. Why? Because my goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to build an online platform where I can generate enough revenue where, I don't have to get on a plane anymore and travel. That's my long-term goal. If in 3 to 5 years I can just sit here, and by the way, 3 to 5 years might be a little long, maybe more like 2, maybe 3. But if I can just sit at home and just make money, that'd be great. You know what I mean? If you can provide value, stay at home, and make money, I think that's a better deal. I'll never stop speaking, though. So in case you're wondering, am I giving up my speaking career? No. But wouldn't it be nice to have the option, though? Wouldn't it be nice to have the option? So this year, what I did was, like every year when you get badass and good. So I'm being a little cocky here, but you just start raising your price just a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Every year I inch that price jump just a little bit. And, people always ask me, say, isn't that scary when you raise your price up just a little bit? I'm like, yeah, every time, because you know that every time you jack up your price, there's a potential that you're going to lose some business. And you have to be okay with that. And I am now okay with that. So we're moving the price points up again. And so for me, like I said, this year, it's all about how do I create, multiple streams of income. And I know we all heard that statement, but I am like fully committed. I am so all in, it's not even funny anymore, because I have a mission. And the mission is, I want to be just sitting on the beach somewhere, providing value. I'm going to work on my podcasts. I'm going to work on my Sales Velocity Academy. I'm going to work on creating coaching content, right? And maybe do some online coaching. This may be the year I begin. I have planned to begin in the second half of the year to begin to do online coaching. And so that's going to be another revenue stream that I'm going to use to generate revenue while I, stay at home. In case you're wondering why do I want to stay at home, it's just I just want to enjoy life. And so anyway, I'm creating multiple streams of income. So just sharing with you my goals, my plans. And do I know specifically how I'm going to get there? No idea. I have an indication. I always say, it's like there's north, there's south, there's west, and there's east, right? All you need is general direction. I know that if I go due north that way, I know there's money to be made over there. How? I don't know yet. But what I'll do as I move along is I'll figure this out, like I always do. Well, you read books, you research, right? I'm the guy that reads about, conservatively, I read 2 to 3 books a month. That's easy. I think I do more than that, but let's just say 2 to 3 books a month. If you're not reading, I think you're missing out. I don't know what percentage of population doesn't read, but it's incredible. I think it's only like 5 to 7% of the population actually reads a book. And I think if you were to narrow that to just business books, that number might be more like 2 or 3% if you take away fiction, right? And what's amazing is that I don't think we appreciate books as much as we should. For example, just to write the Sales Ex Machina book, this took me, I think like 3 months, but 3 months of getting up at 5 in the morning, getting to Starbucks by 5:30, writing for 2 hours, coming back home, doing my thing, right? And then in the evening, I would put in another hour. So I was doing 3 hours a day for 3 months straight. Well, I don't know what those numbers are, but it's a lot of hours, right? And I'm sure there were additional hours in there I didn't calculate. And so let's just say let's call that 1,000 hours. Let's call it 1,500 hours. Who knows? But imagine somebody just put all their knowledge, 1,500 hours worth of content into a book. And all you have to do is click, go online, and buy it for like 10, 15, 20 bucks. Would you exchange 20 bucks for 1,500 hours? I would give you 20 bucks just to give me 1,500 hours. So every time you buy a book, most people are like, I don't know if it's worth reading. Somebody poured their time and effort into this thing. And if I can get just 1 or 2 pieces of information, that's all I really look for, 1 or 2 pieces of information out of a book, that was worth it. That was pure value. If you're not motivated sometimes, really, I'm telling you, if you're not, listen to a podcast, or better yet, read a book. Doesn't matter whose book you read, just read a book. There's something about getting new content in your brain that just kind of stimulates. What happens sometimes, at least to me, is I'm reading a book, and that book will trigger something in my brain, and then fireworks begin, and all of a sudden my brain, what Tony Robbins says, you change your mental state. Doesn't he always do that, Tony Robbins? Something like that. Say I, right? And so for some reason, reading really changes my mental state. So I suggest that. And by the way, if you're looking to write a book, the secret to writing a book is Dan Ariely, who wrote Predictably Irrational, I think is the book. And he said everybody has 2 golden hours. Now think about that for a second. Everybody has 2 golden hours. And I believe that. I believe people have 2 golden hours. And I know you have 2 golden hours. By those 2 golden hours, it's like, mine is between 5:30 and maybe 8:30, somewhere in that range. I know that's 3 hours, but somewhere in that range, I know I have 2 solid hours that I can work in there. And for some reason, when I'm a morning person, and that time frame, 5:30 to 8:30, that range, maybe even 9 o'clock, but no more than that, I can just focus, like uber focus, like hyper focus on something, and just really get into it. And then for the rest of the day, I'm just wobbly. I just can't really focus in on reading or absorbing new material. So I know myself well enough. I can only absorb new material in the morning. I'm a morning sponge, not an evening sponge or a midday sponge. You should figure out, when are those 2 golden hours for you that you can really focus in on something, and then don't fight your biorhythms. I don't even fight them anymore. I know that that's the only time frame I can work with. That range, right? 5:30, 8:30, maybe 9. That's it. I know that's my range. Because I know that's my range, I then plan to work on specific stuff at that time. So, for example, whether I'm writing a book, developing a new course, or just writing an article, blog, whatever it may be, I do it during those times, right? And so what I do is, again, I get up early and I go do it. And what happens to me is that after I get that done, for the rest of the day, it's like I feel good about myself because I already know I got the big work done. The hard stuff has already been done. So, ask yourself, are you a morning sponge, midday sponge, evening sponge? When are those 2 golden hours? And whatever you're trying to achieve, maybe those are the 2 hours you dedicate just to working on that dream. You know what I mean? Get it off your desk and into reality. Get it off your desk and into reality. Why do I say that? Because where do most dreams die? At the desk. They die right there, right there. They die right there. Why? Because you're always writing about it. You're always talking about it, but you never execute. It's amazing how many ideas just die at a desk because people are afraid to take action. So let me begin to wrap this up by saying, if you want to just control your own destiny, to the extent that you can, right? We live in a world, we have the illusion of control, but within this sphere of influence, there's certain things we can control. We can control our time, we can control our attitude towards what's happening in the world, our mindset. And again, back to motivation, we can control that as well. And if you can focus that energy on just doing the work that you enjoy doing, do you know what I mean? Work that you really enjoy doing, whatever that little dream may be, why don't you work on that? If you want to design clothes, maybe let's begin work on that. Begin with something simple. You know what I mean? If you want to open, I don't know, a golf store, how do we begin putting it together? How do we begin doing it? Figure out what it is you want to do, but just those little things right there every day. Remember, move the ball forward. What did I do today to make a dream a reality? Because I'm sure many of you, as you spent the holiday with some of your family members, tell me if this happened. You ran into a cousin, an uncle, a friend, a colleague, and they're still complaining. Do you know what I mean by that? They're still complaining about, the same thing they complained about last year. I want to make money, but I'm really struggling. My bosses don't appreciate me at this job. Or they're thinking about, their dream, right? Well, I really want to start this business. And these are the same people that every year talk about it over and over again. Right? It's like a broken record. Every year you hear the same thing. Give me a heart or a like if you know what I'm talking about. They just talk about the same thing every day. And you're going, when are you going to execute? What are you going to do something? And it gets old after a while. Am I right? It gets old. And so don't be that person. Don't be that person that just talks about what they want to do. It's to the point where you're just like, oh, shut up already. Either do it or don't do it. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I see a lot of hearts and likes on that one. I'll give you a personal story, and I promise to wrap up with this story. One of my first internships was working at NBC. Yes, NBC, the news channel. It was one of my internships out of college. And I remember this guy's name. His name is Rob, and he was an older gentleman. And I would always tell Rob how much I enjoyed being, doing audio, like the audio booth, doing that, right? And I remember I kept talking about it. And I remember I'm an intern. I'm only like 21, 22, something like that, if that. And I remember, I guess I mentioned it one too many times. And then Rob, now you got to keep in mind, This is an older guy, like he's like I don't know, like 65. The guys that have no filter on their mouths. They'll just say anything. And he says, and I remember he said this in a lunchroom at NBC. We're in a lunchroom. I'm sitting with everybody else. I'm one of two or three interns. We're at a table, and I guess I bring this stuff up about going into audio or doing some audio. And if I can paraphrase, he just said, Victor, he's like basically, damn it, I'm tired of hearing you, man. He says, every time you're talking about this, either do it or shut up. Just shut up. And I remember, I just shrank at the table. And I felt like crying and running, man. You know what I mean? And maybe I did cry later on. I don't know. I don't remember. But I remember I was so embarrassed because everything stopped at the table. And then everybody just kind of like that uncomfortable silence. And I remember I didn't say anything for the rest of the meal there. And then I went back. And I remember, for some reason, I hated that guy. I remember hating him so much. I hated that. Every time I saw him, I just hated him. But he taught me a valuable lesson. He said, just shut up, stop talking about it. Either do it or shut up. Just do it or shut up. And as much as that hurt me to hear that, that was, I think, the big kick in the ass I needed to do things. So, I tell people, enough already. Shut up or do it. Just shut up or do it. Stop talking about it. I'd rather talk to somebody who tried and failed than that person who keeps talking about it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because even if you tried and it didn't work out, and by the way, we all know there is no failure. You just got to figure out the combination, right? If you're determined, listen to me, if you're determined to do something, you will figure it out. To me, life, I keep doing this because in my mind, I always imagine a Rubik's Cube, right? And life is like a Rubik's Cube. You just have to keep turning and twisting till you find the right combination to get all the colors on the right side. Success is no different, right? The people that give up just stop doing this. The people that succeed just keep going, okay, there's got to be a way to crack the code. And there is a way to crack the code. There's always a way to crack the code. So again, don't be that person that just talks about it. Shut up, do it. Either that or just plain shut up. So anyway, on that note, thank you guys for hanging out with me. That was my motivational rant to kick off the new year. On that note, I will see you guys. May this year be your best year yet. And let's make it better than last year, if you know what I mean. Take care, guys. Later. There's always a way to crack the code. So again, don't be that person that just talks about it. Shut up, do it. Either that or just plain shut up. So anyway, on that note, thank you guys for hanging out with me. That was my motivational rant to kick off the new year. On that note, I will see you guys. May this year be your best year yet, and let's make it better than last year, if you know what I mean. Take care, guys. Later. Talk about motivation today. Start of a new year. Let's talk motivation. I'll wait to see if anybody decides to join me. I didn't really televise this or mark